Hey champs of ExamsNet, welcome back to another session. Today we are going to discuss the last chapter of human physiology, that is chemical coordination and integration. In the previous chapter we have discussed that there are two systems in the body which help in the coordination of different organs or different organ systems, right? One of them is the neural system, about which we have already discussed, and the second is endocrine system. Okay, the neural system provides the neural coordination. That means the organs or the organ systems are connected with the help of nerve fibers. Okay, nerve fibers. On the other hand, the endocrine system provides the coordination with the help of its secretion called hormones. Okay, so in this chapter we are going to discuss about the endocrine system and the hormones secreted by them. Okay, so first we will see the comparison between the neural system and the endocrine system. The main differences are that the neural system provides a point-to-point coordination or point-to-point connection between the organs or the organ systems. Okay, because we know that the nerve fibers are spread throughout the body like wires. Okay, just like the wires. Okay, so they carry the signal from one place to another. They carry the signal from one place and transmit it to some other point. So the signal starts from one point, let's say point A, and then it reaches at another point B. Okay, so it provides a point to point connection, and therefore it is a fast process. Okay, the coordination provided by the neural system is fast because it provides point to point coordination or point to point connection. On the other hand, the endocrine systems does not allow point to point connection. Okay, no point to point connection because the secretion called hormone are secreted into the blood, and the flow of blood is not from one point to another. It flows into any direction, right? Therefore it does not provide point to point connection, and this is the reason why this type of coordination is slow. Okay, so the coordination provided by the neural system is faster, whereas the coordination provided by the endocrine system is slower. Okay, because the speed of the blood is slower than the speed of the current. In the neural system, the signals are transmitted with the help of the current that pass through the nerves, right? And this coordination provided by the neural system is short-lived. Why is it short-lived? Because we know that the membranes of the nerves or membranes of the axons are polarized. Okay, there we had discussed about the polarized membrane in the previous chapter, if you remember. And if you have not read that chapter or not seen the video, just go and watch the previous chapter's video. Okay, so there we have discussed that the membrane of the nerves are in polarized state where there is more positive charge outside and negative charge inside, right? But after the transmission of the signal, the nerves get depolarized or the membranes get depolarized, so they have to get polarized again if they have to transmit another signal. Okay, so after one transmission the membranes get depolarized, so one transmission is very short lived. Whereas in case of endocrine system, since the hormones are present in the blood, this has a long lasting effect. Okay, now another very important point is the drawback with the neural system. The drawback of the neural system is that the nerves cannot enter into every cell of the body, right? So it is their drawback. Nerves do not innervate all cells of the body. Whereas the hormones can enter into every cell of the body. They can reach all the cells of the body because they are directly released into the bloodstream. Okay. So let's revise it again what we have seen. We have seen that the neural system provides point-to-point coordination or point-to-point connection, whereas it is not the case in the endocrine system. Secondly, because it provides point-to-point connection, it is faster, and the coordination provided by the endocrine system is slower. And then the one of the neural system is short-lived, whereas in the endocrine system it is long-lasting. Okay, and the nerves do not innervate all cells of the body, whereas the hormones can innervate or enter all cells of the body, right? So these differences you have to keep in mind. Now let's see endocrine glands. What are the characteristics of the endocrine glands? First of all, it is ductless. What are ducts? Ducts are like tubes. These are like tubes which can release the secretions at any particular point, but these do not have ducts. Okay, there are no ducts or no tubes. Therefore, their secretions are released directly into the bloodstream. And what is the secretion? It is hormones. The secretions of the endocrine glands are called hormones. Now, in case of invertebrates, the endocrine glands are very simple, or endocrine system is very simple because only few hormones are secreted. Whereas in case of vertebrates, the endocrine system is more complex. More complex endocrine system. Endocrine system, because a large number of hormones are secreted in the vertebrates. So in the previous chapters also we have seen that the systems in the lower organisms are very simple, whereas all the systems like circulatory system, excretory system, every system is more complex in the higher organisms, right? So the invertebrates are the lower organisms, so endocrine system will also be simpler in them, and the vertebrates are higher organisms, therefore the endocrine system will be more complex in the vertebrates, right? Now let's discuss about the hormones. That means the secretion of the endocrine glands. So there is a classical definition of hormone which says that these are the chemicals produced by the endocrine glands and released into the blood and transported to a distantly located target organ. So suppose this is an endocrine gland. It secretes hormones into the blood, right? Where is it secreted? It is secreted into the blood, and then it is transported to a distantly located target organ. Here we have a target organ. The organ can be near or it can be at a distance, right? So distantly located target organ. Now how will this hormone identify its target organ? Because its target organ will have special receptors present on the surface. Okay, so the hormones will bind with the specific receptors which are present in the target organs, and these specific receptors will not be present in another organ. Okay, so the definition which is used originally or earlier is that these are the chemicals produced by the endocrine glands and released into the blood, and then these are transported to a distantly located target organ. Okay, so this is classical definition, but the new definition or the current definition says that these are non-nutrients chemicals which act as intercellular messengers and are produced in trace amounts. Okay, so both the definitions are correct definitely, but this is the new definition. Okay, these are non-nutrient chemicals. That means they do not contain nutrients, because if the nutrients will be present, these nutrients can be consumed for some other purpose, right? And these act as intercellular messengers. They can carry messages from one cell to another, and these are produced in trace amounts. These are produced in very small amounts. Okay, so that they do not get wasted. Only the amount which is required will be produced, right? Now come to the human endocrine system. Human endocrine system. We are discussing the human physiology, so we will focus on human endocrine system. Here we have endocrine glands plus hormone producing tissues or cells which can produce hormones. But we are focusing on the endocrine glands only. So let's have a look at the diagram. Here all the endocrine glands are shown. In the top portion we have the brain. So three glands are present in the brain. First one is the hypothalamus, second one is the pituitary gland, and the third one is the pineal gland. Okay, so the hypothalamus, then pituitary and pineal. These three glands are situated in the brain. Then as you move downward, you will see thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is located in the throat region. Okay, in the throat region. Then thymus. Thymus is located in the chest region. Okay, so how many endocrine glands we have seen? Three glands situated in the brain: hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal. Then in the throat region, one gland, that is thyroid gland. Then in the chest region, there is another one gland, that is thymus. So total five, and then one pancreas. Now, what is special about pancreas is that it is known as, it is an endocrine gland as well as exocrine gland. Okay, endocrine as well as exocrine. Therefore, it is known as heterocrine. Heterocrine means it can act as endocrine gland as well as exocrine gland. What is the difference between the endocrine and exocrine glands? The endocrine glands are ductless. Just now we have discussed they do not have ducts or tubes, whereas the exocrine glands have ducts. Therefore, they can secrete their secretions at any particular place. For example, the saliva, it is secreted by the salivary glands, and the salivary glands, because these contain ducts, therefore the saliva is secreted in the mouth at a particular point. Okay, for example, ear wax comes out of the ear only, right? Because it is secreted by an exocrine gland. So the exocrine glands have tubes or ducts, but the endocrine glands do not have tubes. Therefore they leave or release their secretions directly into the blood. So the pancreas can act as endocrine as well as exocrine gland. Okay, then as you move downward, you will see adrenal glands. We have discussed that the word renal is related to kidney. So the renal glands are present on the kidneys. Okay, so two kidneys you can see. On the top portion of the kidney, you can see two glands are shown. Okay, one gland in each kidney. So these are adrenal glands. Where are they located? On the upper portion of the kidneys. Then there are two gonads. Two gonads. In males, it is testis, and in females, it is ovaries. So these two are known as gonads. Okay. So what are the endocrine glands that we have discussed? Three glands in the brain: hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal. Then one gland in the throat region, that is thyroid. One gland in the chest region, that is thymus. Then as you move downward, you will see pancreas, then adrenal glands in the kidneys, and then two gonads are there. In male, it is testis. In females, it is ovaries. Okay. These are present in the pairs, one pair of testes or one pair of ovaries. So it was just an introduction. Now let's discuss these hormones, these glands one by one. The first gland that we have to discuss is the hypothalamus, which is located in the brain. So what is the exact location of the hypothalamus? It is located at the basal part of the diencephalon, which is again part of the forebrain. Okay, in the previous chapter we have discussed that the forebrain has three parts: cerebrum, the uppermost part of the forebrain. Then lower to the cerebrum we have thalamus, and below the thalamus we have hypothalamus, right? So the forebrain is actually divided into two parts: the cerebrum and the diencephalon. The thalamus and hypothalamus, these two are part of the diencephalon. Okay, so we can say that the hypothalamus is located at the basal part of the diencephalon. And why it is known as hypothalamus? Because it is located below the thalamus. Okay, it regulates a wide spectrum of the body functions. A large number of body functions are regulated by the hypothalamus through the hormones secreted by it. Okay, it contains several group of neurosecretory cells. So the cells of the hypothalamus are neurosecretory cells. These are known as nuclei. That means these cells can secrete hormones. Okay, therefore these are neurosecretory cells. And the hormones which are released by the neurosecretory cells can regulate the synthesis and secretion of the pituitary hormones. So we have seen that in the brain there are three main endocrine glands. One is hypothalamus, second one is pituitary, and the third one is pineal. Okay, so the hypothalamus and pituitary are two different endocrine glands, but the hormones secreted by the pituitary glands are actually controlled by the hormones secreted by the hypothalamus. Right, so we can say that the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland, and you must be knowing that the pituitary gland is known as the master gland. And since hypothalamus is controlling the pituitary secretion, therefore we can say that the hypothalamus is the master of the master gland. Okay, and the hormones which are secreted by the hypothalamus can be releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones. Okay, that means they can have releasing action or inhibitory action, or we can say that it can have positive action on other hormones or negative action on the other hormones. Okay, so we have example for the releasing hormone as well as the inhibiting hormone. The example of the releasing hormone that is released from the hypothalamus is gonadotrophin releasing hormone. What is the name of the hormone? Gonadotrophin releasing hormone. Now, as it is clear from the name that it will help in the release of gonadotrophins. Okay, so gonadotrophins are another hormones which are secreted by the pituitary, but these hormones, gonadotrophin releasing hormone, will help in the release or secretion of the gonadotrophins. Okay, so they stimulate the pituitary synthesis and release of gonadotrophins. That is why the name gonadotrophin releasing hormone. Okay, so you have to remember that gonadotrophin is one hormone and gonadotrophin releasing hormone is another hormone which helps in the release of the gonadotrophins. Okay. Then the example of the inhibitory hormone is somatostatin. So somatostatin has a negative effect on the pituitary hormone. That means it will inhibit the release of the growth hormone which is produced in the pituitary gland. Okay, so the gonadotrophin releasing hormone has positive effect because it helps in the release or secretion of the gonadotrophins. On the other hand, the somatostatin has a negative effect on the hormone. That means it inhibits the release of the growth hormone from the pituitary. Okay. So we have seen that the hormones which are released by the hypothalamus can have both positive effect as well as negative effect on the pituitary hormones. Okay. So here we have the diagram. Here you can see the connection between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. In purple color, we have the hypothalamic region. Okay, purple color is the hypothalamus, and in orange color, we have the pituitary region. Again, in the orange color also you can see two shades, the dark orange and light orange. In dark orange color, anterior pituitary is shown, and in light orange color, that means on the right side, the posterior pituitary is shown. Okay. Now, we know that the hypothalamus and pituitary glands are connected to each other by the stalk. So, there is a stalk which connects the hypothalamus with the pituitary. Okay. So, these two are connected. That is why the hormones which are released in the hypothalamus can reach to the pituitary gland. Okay, to affect the hormones secreted in the pituitary gland, either positively or negatively. Okay, now how do the hormones secreted by the hypothalamus reach in the pituitary region? So there are two ways. Here you can see two neurons are shown here. One is shorter and the other is longer. Okay, the short neuron is associated with the anterior pituitary, the dark orange color region. So here it is short. That means this neuron is not entering deep into the anterior pituitary. It is located near the surface. So the hormones will be secreted from this neuron directly into the anterior pituitary, on the upper portion of the anterior pituitary, and then this hormone will enter into the pituitary gland, anterior pituitary part, completely with the help of a portal circulatory system. Okay, so in anterior pituitary, a portal circulatory system will be working. Portal circulatory system. Okay, so the hormone which is released by the neuron of the hypothalamus will travel through the portal circulatory system to reach into the anterior pituitary. On the other hand, in case of posterior pituitary, the hormone will be directly released by the neuron inside the posterior pituitary, because this neuron is longer. You can see this neuron is directly connected from the hypothalamus to the posterior pituitary region. Okay. So the hormone will be released directly into the posterior pituitary without the involvement of the portal circulatory system. So you have to remember that the portal circulatory system is associated with the anterior pituitary, okay, and not the posterior pituitary. Now we come to the second gland, that is the pituitary gland. This is also present in the brain, right? And where is it located? It is located in a bony cavity which is known as sella turcica. Okay, the cavity is known as sella turcica. And then this is attached to the hypothalamus by a stalk. We have already discussed this. The pituitary gland and the hypothalamus are attached by a stop. And this pituitary gland is divided anatomically into two parts, adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. Okay, so the two anatomical regions of the pituitary glands are adenohypophysis and the neurohypophysis. So let's first discuss about the adenohypophysis. Adenohypophysis again consists of two regions. One is pars distalis and the other is pars intermedia. Okay, and most of the hormones are secreted by the pars distalis region of the adenohypophysis. So what are the hormones which are secreted by the pars in the pars distalis region? First one is growth hormone. GH means growth hormone. Okay, growth hormone. Then PRL means prolactin. Prolactin. Then TSH, that means thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone. Then ACTH means adrenocorticotropic hormone. Adrenocorticotropic hormone. Then LH means luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone. And FSH means follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone. So you can see so many hormones are released in the pars distalis region of the adenohypophysis. Okay, what did we discuss? We discussed that the pituitary gland is divided anatomically into two parts, adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. Adenohypophysis again consists of two parts, pars distalis, which is known as anterior pituitary, and the other one is pars intermedia. There are a large number of hormones which are secreted in the pars distalis region, but there is only one hormone that is secreted in the pars intermedia region, and this is the melanocyte stimulating hormone, that is MSH. Okay, MSH. It is melanocyte stimulating hormone. That means they will affect the melanocytes. Melanocytes are the cells which contain the pigments called melanin. Okay, so MSH is secreted in the pars intermedia. Okay, secreted by the pars intermedia. So pars distalis and pars intermedia both are parts of the adenohypophysis, but pars intermedia releases only one hormone, that is MSH, whereas a large number of hormones are released by the pars distalis region. Now let's come to the pars nervosa. That means the posterior pituitary. Okay, so it is under the neurohypophysis. The neurohypophysis part of the pituitary is also known as pars nervosa or posterior pituitary. Okay, now what are the hormones which are released in the posterior pituitary? There are two hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin. Now what is special about these hormones is that these hormones are actually synthesized by the hypothalamus, but these are transported axonally to the neurohypophysis. That means these hormones secreted or released in the hypothalamus are transported to the posterior pituitary region with the help of the neurons or the neurosecretory cells. We have seen the diagram that the posterior pituitary is under direct neural regulation of the hypothalamus. Okay, so you would have seen that there was a short neuron which was joining the hypothalamus with the anterior pituitary, but there was a longer neuron which was joining the hypothalamus with the posterior pituitary. Okay, so these hormones oxytocin and vasopressin will be transported by this longer neuron from the hypothalamus to the posterior pituitary region. Okay, now we will discuss each of these hormones that we have seen. First one is the growth hormone. It is secreted in the pars distalis region. Okay, pars distalis region of the adenohypophysis. And pars distalis region is also known as anterior pituitary. Pars intermedia is not known as anterior pituitary. Pars distalis is known as anterior pituitary. Okay. Now, the growth hormone, as it is clear from the name, it will help in the growth, right? But if there is over secretion of the growth hormones, then what will happen? There will be extra growth, abnormal growth. Okay, so it will lead to abnormal growth. and this condition is known as gigantism. Okay, that means the size will be giant. This will lead to abnormal growth, and it can result in the disfigurement of the face, especially of the face, which is known as acromegaly. So acromegaly is a condition when there is over secretion of the growth hormone, which leads to a disfigurement of the face. For example, if you have seen the great Khali, the great Khali, who is a wrestler, have you seen his size? He's so giant, right? He's so big, and his face is also quite disfigured. So he is actually suffering from acromegaly. Okay, and this is actually hard to diagnose in the early stages. Therefore, it is often too late when it is diagnosed. Okay. And this was about the over secretion. What if there is under secretion or low secretion of the growth hormones? Obviously there will be lesser growth than required, right? So it will lead to stunted growth. The under secretion will lead to stunted growth, and this condition is known as dwarfism. Okay, and it is also known as pituitary dwarfism, because the growth hormones are released from the pituitary gland. Now prolactin, in short it is written as PRL. So prolactin, lactin word is related to milk, right? So this hormone regulates the growth of the mammary glands and the formation of milk in them. Okay, these things are very simple. You just have to read once and then you will remember. Then TSH, that means thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone. So these hormones stimulate the synthesis and secretion of the thyroid hormones. Okay, so thyroid hormones are the hormones which are secreted from the thyroid gland, and these thyroid hormones are affected by the thyroid stimulating hormone which is released from the pituitary gland. Okay, so again you have to remember that thyroid stimulating hormone is another hormone and thyroid hormones are other hormones. Okay, the thyroid hormones which are released by the thyroid glands are regulated by the thyroid stimulating hormone produced in the anterior pituitary. Okay, then the next one is ACTH, that means adrenocorticotropic hormone. Adrenocorticotropic hormone. Tropic hormone. Okay, it is a steroid hormone, glucocorticoid from the adrenal cortex. Okay. Then the next one is LH and FSH, that means luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. These are known as gonadotropins. Okay, these are known as gonadotropins and they stimulate the gonadal activity. Why they are known as gonadotropins? Because they stimulate the gonadal activity. Gonadal activity means what? Gonads. What are gonads? In males, testis. Testis is the gonad in male, and in females, it is ovaries. Okay, so testis and ovaries are the gonads, right? And these gonadal activities of the testis and ovaries are stimulated by the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone which are secreted in the anterior pituitary. Okay. Then what are the roles of the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone? Let's see. In males, it will play different role, and in females, it will play different role. So in males, what is the role of the luteinizing hormone? It helps in the synthesis and secretion of androgens from the testis. And what is the role of the FSH in the males? It regulates the spermatogenesis. That means formation of the sperms along with the androgens. Okay, so the FSH along with the androgens, both FSH and androgens, these two will together regulate the spermatogenesis. Okay, so this was the role of LH and FSH in males. What is the role in female? So again in female, the role of LH, luteinizing hormone, is that it induces ovulation of the fully mature Graafian follicles. Okay, you would have learnt about the Graafian follicles. If you have not learnt, we will learn in the class 12 chapters. Okay, in the human reproduction. So primary follicles, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle and Graafian follicles, these things we will be discussing there. So it induces ovulation of the fully matured Graafian follicles. And it also maintains the corpus luteum, which is formed from the remnants of the Graafian follicles after ovulation. Okay. So the Graafian follicles, the remnants of the Graafian follicles form the corpus luteum. Again, we will discuss about these things in the human reproduction chapter. Okay, so this corpus luteum is also maintained with the help of the luteinizing hormone. Okay, so this was the role of luteinizing hormone in female. Now, what is the role of follicle stimulating hormone in females? It helps in the growth and development of the ovarian follicles. Okay, follicle stimulating hormone, it helps in the development of follicles, ovarian follicles. Then the next one is MSH, that is melanocyte stimulating hormone. So obviously they will act on the melanocytes. Melanocytes are the melanin containing cells. Melanin containing or melanin producing cells. Containing cells. And these melanin, the chemicals melanin or the pigments melanin help in the pigmentation, give the pigmentation to the skin. So the pigmentation of the skin is regulated by the hormone known as melanocyte stimulating hormone. And this melanocyte stimulating hormone is secreted by which part of the pituitary? From the pars intermedia. Okay, let me revise again. So we have seen that the pituitary gland is divided into two parts anatomically. First one is adenohypophysis, and the other one is neurohypophysis. Okay, neurohypophysis. Now, adenohypophysis is again divided into two parts. First one is pars distalis, which is known as the anterior pituitary, right? And the other one is pars intermedia. So what are the hormones which are secreted by the pars distalis? These are growth hormones, prolactin, all those hormones that we have discussed. Then the hormone that is secreted by pars intermedia is melanocyte stimulating hormone. Okay, so this MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone, is secreted by the pars intermedia of the adenohypophysis. Now the next two hormones that we are going to discuss are released from the neurohypophysis, that means the posterior pituitary. Okay. So oxytocin released from the posterior pituitary, or neurohypophysis, acts on the smooth muscles and stimulate contraction. So the oxytocin is responsible for the contraction of the smooth muscles of the body. For example, in females, it can lead to vigorous contraction of the uterus during the childbirth. Okay, so at the time of the childbirth, there is a requirement for the contraction of the uterus. So this vigorous contraction is caused by the hormone known as oxytocin. Okay, and it can also help in the milk ejection from the mammary glands, because the milk ejection also requires the contraction of the mammary glands. Okay, so this is also done by the oxytocin hormone. Next hormone that is released in the posterior pituitary is vasopressin. Now, one very important thing that you have to remember, that oxytocin and vasopressin are actually synthesized in the hypothalamus. These are not synthesized in the pituitary. Although we discuss about them in the under the pituitary topic, but they are synthesized in the hypothalamus, and then they are transported to the posterior pituitary region with the help of the neuron. Okay, so these are transported axonally, that means through the action of the neuron to the posterior pituitary. Okay, so vasopressin, this is the last hormone that we have to discuss under the pituitary. So it acts mainly at the kidney, and it helps in the reabsorption of water and electrolytes from the distal tubules. Okay, we have discussed about these tubules in the excretion chapter, right? So if you have not understood the concept of reabsorption of water during excretion, then you have to refer to that chapter, excretory products and their elimination. Okay, and this prevents diuresis. So what happens? This hormone, vasopressin hormone, which is also known as ADH. ADH means anti-diuretic hormone. Anti-diuretic hormone. Why it is known as anti-diuretic hormone? Because it works against diuresis. It prevents diuresis. Now, what is diuresis? Diuresis is diuresis means excess loss of fluid from the body through the urine. Okay, so excess loss of water from the urine. So since this hormone vasopressin or ADH is involved in the reabsorption of water, so water will be reabsorbed from the nephron, right? That means there will be lesser loss of water or no loss of water, right? Some amount of water has to be removed for excretion, but obviously it will prevent excessive loss of water, right? That means it will prevent diuresis. Therefore, it is known as anti-diuretic hormone. Okay, and we know that excess loss of water from the body can also cause dehydration. So it also prevents dehydration. Okay, this excess loss of loss of water from the body is known as dehydration, right? So this hormone, vasopressin hormone, prevents dehydration as well, right? What if there is a lack of ADH? If ADH is not formed in the body, what will happen? Obviously, there will be excess loss of water. Then it can lead to diabetes insipidus. Okay, excess loss of water from the body or the dehydration can lead to diabetes insipidus. Okay, so the people who are suffering from the diabetes insipidus feel extremely thirsty. Okay, they are thirsty all the time because water is being lost, right, continuously. Now we come to the next gland, that is the pineal gland. Pineal gland is also present in the brain. Hypothalamus, pituitary and pineal. These three are present in the brain. So the pineal gland, as the name suggests, pineal. So it is very small in size. Its size is just like a pea. Size of a pea, very small. So it is present on the dorsal side of the forebrain. It secretes melatonin. So the hormone secreted by the pineal gland is melatonin. Okay. Now you remember that melatonin and melanin are two different things. Okay. Melatonin hormone. Now this hormone melatonin helps in the maintenance of 24-hour rhythm or diurnal rhythm of the body. That means it maintains the normal sleep wake cycle. Sleep wake cycle of the body. It also helps in maintaining normal temperature of the body. Okay. Other than that, it can also be involved in maintenance of the metabolism, pigmentation, menstrual cycle and defense capability. So all these things are affected by the hormone called melatonin, which is secreted by the pineal gland. Okay, so there is only one hormone that is secreted by the pineal gland, melatonin. So you have to remember this. Then we come to the next gland, that is the thyroid gland. Where is thyroid gland located? In the throat region, okay, in the neck region. So thyroid gland consists of two lobes. So this is trachea, the windpipe. On each side of the trachea, we have one thyroid gland. So there is one pair of thyroid gland. One thyroid gland consists of two lobes. So on each side of the trachea, we have one lobe. So this is one lobe, this is another lobe. Okay, so two lobes are located on either side of the trachea, and these two lobes are connected to each other. These are connected to each other by a thin flap of the connective tissue that is known as isthmus. So what is the role of isthmus? It connects the two lobes of the thyroid gland. Okay. Now, the thyroid gland consists of follicles and stomal tissue. So two types of tissues are present in the thyroid gland. One is known as follicle and the other is known as stoma, okay, or stomal tissue. So each follicle consists of the follicular cells. We know that the tissues are made up of cells. So the follicle tissue, two types of tissue are present, follicle and stomal tissue. The follicle tissue consists of the follicular cells enclosing a cavity. Now these follicular cells of the follicle release two hormones. Okay, so these two hormones are very important here. Okay, this is the most important part of this topic. The hormones which are secreted by the follicular cells of the thyroid are thyroxine and triiodothyronine. Okay, so one hormone is thyroxine, which is also known as tetraiodothyronine, and the other hormone that is released by the follicular cells is the triiodothyronine. Okay, the tetraiodothyronine is also known as thyroxine. Why it is known as tetraiodothyronine? Because it consists of four iodines. On the other hand, the triiodothyronine consists of three iodine. Therefore, tri means 3, tetra means 4. So if it consists of 3 iodines molecules, it means it is triiodothyronine. If it consists of 4 iodines, it means it is tetraiodothyronine. And the tetraiodothyronine is also known as thyroxine. Okay. Now, out of these two, which one is metabolically active? The triiodothyronine is the metabolically active form, okay, or biologically active form. So it can directly regulate the metabolism, directly take part in the metabolism. But tetraiodothyronine, which is also known as thyroxine, is not biologically active. So it remains inactive. It remains inactive and it remains as a stable reservoir. Okay, and when it is required, when it has to take part in the metabolism, then it will be converted into triiodothyronine, then it can participate in the metabolism. Okay, so it will be converted to triiodothyronine or T3 to control the bodily functions. Okay, it cannot take part in the metabolism directly as T4. It has to be converted into T3 before taking part in the metabolism. Got it? So we have seen that both the tetraiodothyronine as well as the triiodothyronine consist of iodines. So why is iodine important? So it is important for normal rate of the hormone synthesis in the thyroid. If iodine will not be present, then it will affect the rate of the synthesis of these hormones adversely. Okay. Now there are two conditions, hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. So let's discuss about the hypothyroidism. Hypo means below, okay, or low level. So when there is a low level of something, it can lead to hypothyroidism. It is caused by the deficiency of the iodine. Okay, so if there is deficiency of iodine, it will cause hypothyroidism and it causes enlargement of the thyroid gland. What is the effect of the hypothyroidism? It causes enlargement of the thyroid gland. We will have a look at the picture also. Now, in pregnancy, during pregnancy in women, it can lead to defective development and maturation of the growing baby. So it can affect the growing baby, okay, in the pregnant women. So it is important to take adequate amount of iodine, right? Also, it can lead to stunted growth, that is known as cretinism, okay? So there can be underdevelopment of the baby that is growing in the fetus. It can lead to mental retardness, low intelligent quotient, abnormal skin condition. Also, it can lead to deaf mutism in the baby. Okay. So this was the case when it happens in the pregnant women. In normal adult women who is not pregnant, it can lead to irregular menstrual cycle. Okay. Now here we have the picture. You can see the enlargement of the thyroid gland, which is caused by the hypothyroidism, is also known as goiter. So this condition is known as goiter. That means enlargement of the thyroid gland. So you can see in this person is suffering from the goiter. His thyroid gland has enlarged. Okay. So you can see the comparison of the normal thyroid gland and the goiter. So in the normal condition, the thyroid gland is of a normal size, right? But in case of goiter, the size is big. Size is more. It led to the enlarged thyroid gland. So can you compare the sizes of the thyroid gland in normal condition and in the goiter? Look at the picture. Now let's move. How hypothyroidism affects the body. So there are many more effects of the hypothyroidism. This you can remember if you want. It can lead to memory decline. It can lead to dry skin, constipation, irregular or heavy periods or menstrual cycles. It can lead to joint and muscle aches. It can lead to cold intolerance, weight gain, fatigue and depression. So all of these can be caused by the hypothyroidism. That means deficiency of the iodine. Okay. Now here you have to note that this hypothyroidism leads to weight gain. Okay. Hypothyroidism leads to weight gain. On the other hand, when we will discuss the hyperthyroidism, there you will see that we will see weight loss. Okay, that leads to hyperthyroidism leads to weight loss. Okay, so hypothyroidism, weight gain, and hyperthyroidism, weight loss. Let's come to the hyperthyroidism. It is caused by the cancer of the thyroid gland or development of the nodules in the thyroid gland. Okay. And what happens? The rate of the synthesis and secretion of the thyroid hormone increases abnormally, right? So when the rate of the synthesis and secretion of the thyroid hormone increases abnormally, it leads to hyperthyroidism. Okay. And exophthalmic goiter. So we have seen that the hypothyroidism also leads to goiter and the hyperthyroidism also leads to goiter. In this condition, it is known as exophthalmic goiter. It is a form of hyperthyroidism. Okay. And it is also known as Graves' disease. What are the characteristics of the Graves' disease or exophthalmic goiter? So this disease is characterized by the enlargement of the thyroid gland. Again, the thyroid gland will be enlarged. So the thyroid glands are enlarged in both the conditions, hypothyroidism as well as hyperthyroidism. It can also lead to protrusion of the eyeballs. The eyeballs protrude outside. Okay. Then it can lead to increase in the basal metabolic rate. And it can lead to weight loss. We have discussed that the hypothyroidism leads to weight gain, whereas the hyperthyroidism leads to weight loss. Okay. Here you can see increase in basal metabolic rate. On the other hand, in hypothyroidism, this leads to decrease in the basal metabolic rate. So these are just opposite. Here we have the picture of the protruding eyes. You can see the bulging eyes or the protruding eyes. The eyes become like this in case of the Graves' disease or the exophthalmic goiter. Now, other symptoms of the Graves' disease, you can see shortness of the breath, tremors. You can feel tremors in your hands. It can lead to weight loss. We have already discussed. Heat intolerance and excessive sweating. Why? Because there is increase in the basal metabolic rate. So when the metabolic rate increases, it can lead to increased heart rate. It can also lead to the release of heat. Okay, when the metabolic reaction will take place very fast, then a lot of heat will be released. So this will lead to heat intolerance and excessive sweating, right? And rapid heartbeat or heart palpitation, obviously, because there is increased metabolic rate, right? On the other hand, in hypothyroidism, it will be very low. Okay, there will be less metabolic rate, which will lead to very less heart rate. Now, what are the roles of the thyroid hormones? We can summarize the roles of the thyroid hormones. So these hormones help in the regulation of the basal metabolic rates. Okay, they help in the formation of RBCs as well. They can also control the metabolism of the carbohydrates, proteins and fats. Okay, they are also involved in the metabolism of the carbohydrates, proteins and fats. And they can also influence maintenance of water and electrolytes balance in the body. Okay. Now, a very important thing here is that a protein called thyrocalcitonin, it is also a hormone, actually, proteinaceous hormone. This is also secreted by the thyroid gland, okay, thyrocalcitonin. And this regulates the blood calcium level. So the thyrocalcitonin, which is secreted by the thyroid gland, helps in the balance of in maintaining the balance of calcium ions. Okay, so it regulates the blood calcium levels. So what does it do? It decreases the blood calcium level. You have to remember that the thyrocalcitonin decreases the blood calcium levels. That means it plays a very important role if there is an abnormally high amount of calcium in the blood. Okay, then what will this thyrocalcitonin do? It will decrease the calcium level in the blood. Okay, and this way it will regulate the calcium level in the blood. Now we come to the next gland, that is the parathyroid gland. Now the actions of the parathyroid gland will be just opposite to the action of the thyroid gland. Okay, let's see. First we will have a look at the diagram. So here you can compare the figure of the thyroid gland and the parathyroid gland. This is the thyroid gland. Okay, this is thyroid gland. Two lobes are there, one lobe on each side of the trachea, right? And the next diagram is of parathyroid gland. So this is parathyroid. There are four parathyroid glands. How many? Four glands. And these are located on the dorsal side of the thyroid gland. Okay. So four parathyroid glands, two are present in each lobe of the thyroid gland. Okay, so you can see this is the back side of the thyroid gland. Okay, this is lobe 1, this is lobe 2. In one lobe there are two parathyroid glands which are shown as red color circles. So you can see two red color circles on the left side and two red color circles on the right side. So on the left side there are two parathyroid glands, on the right side also there are two parathyroid glands. So we can say that there are total 4 parathyroid glands, 2 parathyroid glands present in each lobe. Okay, now let's move. Two pairs on the back side of the thyroid gland, where they are present on the back side of the thyroid gland, one in each lobe of the thyroid gland. We have already seen they secrete a peptide hormone known as parathyroid hormone. So the name of the hormone is just like the name of the gland. Okay, parathyroid hormone. And the secretion of the parathyroid hormone is regulated by the circulating levels of the calcium ions. Okay, so let's discuss about the parathyroid hormones. What are the roles of the parathyroid hormones which are secreted by the parathyroid gland? So these hormones increase the calcium levels in the blood. That means these are hypercalcemic. Okay, they increase the blood calcium levels. This action is just opposite to the action of the thyrocalcitonin. Thyrocalcitonin. We have discussed just now that thyrocalcitonin, which are produced in the thyroid gland, these are related to the thyroid gland. They help in the, or they decrease the blood calcium level. They decrease the blood calcium level, right? On the other hand, the parathyroid hormone increase the blood calcium level. So you can see these are antagonists, opposite to each other. Okay, so therefore it is said that the parathyroid hormone are hypercalcemic. Okay, they act on bones and stimulate the process of bone resorption. Okay, they act on the bones and increase the bone resorption, which is also known as dissolution or demineralization. That means the calcium ion will be absorbed in the bone. Okay, the bones will take up the calcium ion. Sorry, I just said the opposite. The calcium ion which is present or stored in the bones will be released into the blood, because these hormones are increasing the blood calcium level. Okay, so they will help in the process of the bone resorption or dissolution or demineralization. D means removal. Okay, so the calcium will be removed from the bones and they will be released into the blood, which will lead to increase in the blood calcium level. Okay, on the other hand, the thyrocalcitonin, which decreases the blood calcium level, will help in the absorption of the calcium into the bone. Okay, so this you have to understand. They also help in the resorption of calcium ion by the renal tubules. So the calcium ion will also be reabsorbed by the renal tubules, and then it will be released into the blood, obviously, because overall it has to increase the blood calcium level. So it will be absorbed by the renal tubules and released into the bloodstream. Okay, then it will also lead to absorption of calcium from the digested food, and when something is absorbed from the digested food, it is also released into the bloodstream. Okay, so overall, by different ways, it leads to increase in the blood calcium level. Thus, it helps in maintaining the calcium balance in the blood along with the thyrocalcitonin. Okay, so we have discussed that the thyrocalcitonin decreases the blood calcium level. Blood calcium level. On the other hand, the parathyroid hormone PTH increases the blood calcium level. Okay, so when there is large amount of the calcium in the blood, it has to be decreased, then thyrocalcitonin will act. And if there is lack of calcium in the blood and it has to be increased, then parathyroid hormone will act. Okay, so these two will together maintain the balance of calcium in the blood. Got it? So here we have a summary of what does a thyrocalcitonin do. So here you can see thyroid gland is there and this is calcitonin. What does calcitonin do? It decreases the blood calcium level. So how does it decrease the blood calcium level? It inhibits the calcium absorption by the intestines. Okay, so the intestines will not absorb the calcium from the digested food. So the blood will not get the calcium. Then it will also inhibit the calcium reabsorption in the kidney. The kidneys will also not absorb the calcium. So again, there will be lack of calcium in the blood, and then it will promote deposition of the calcium into bones. So the thyrocalcitonin will help in the deposition of calcium in the bones. On the other hand, the parathyroid hormone will lead to demineralization. That means removal of calcium from the bone, and then the calcium will be released into the blood. Got it? So you have to remember that these two are working against each other. Thyrocalcitonin will decrease the blood calcium level, and the parathyroid hormone will increase the blood calcium level. Okay, so in general, they maintain the blood calcium levels. Now we come to the next gland, that is thymus. Where is thymus present? It is located in the chest region. Okay, in the chest region. It is a lobular structure located between the lungs. Okay, it is located between the two lungs, behind the sternum. What is sternum? The triangular shape or T-shaped bone which is located in the chest, middle portion of your chest. There, this is known as sternum. So behind the sternum, this thymus is located, and it is located on the ventral side of the aorta. That means behind this, aorta of the heart is present. Okay. Now, the next point is it secretes a peptide hormone called thymosin. So, which hormone is secreted by the thymus? Thymosins. From the name also, you can connect. Thymosins are secreted by the thymus. And the thymosin hormone, which is a peptide hormone, leads to the differentiation of the T lymphocytes. We know that T lymphocytes are part of the cell-mediated immunity. They take part in the cell-mediated immunity. Cell-mediated immunity. And it also promotes the production of antibodies which take part in the humoral immunity. Okay, antibodies take part in the humoral and immunity. So in general, we can say that the thymosins play a very important role in the immunity of the body, in providing immunity to the body. Okay, so the thymus is important for, why is thymus important? For maintaining immunity or immune balance of the body. Okay, and we know that the immune system is responsible for fighting with the diseases, right? So if the immune system will be disturbed, then we will not be able to, our body will not be able to fight with the diseases. Okay, so in old individuals, what happens? The thymus is degenerated. Okay, the thymus is degenerated in the old individuals, which leads to decreased production of the thymosins. And we know that the thymosins play a very important role in maintaining the immune balance or increasing the immunity of the body. So if the thymosins will be produced in lesser amount, it will lead to decreased immunity, and that is why the older individuals suffer from more diseases. Okay, and they do not recover soon because their thymus is degenerated. Okay, in our case, we have well developed thymus, therefore our body can quickly fight with the diseases when we are young. But when we will become old, then our thymus will get degenerated, so there will be lesser production of thymosins, which will lead to lesser immunity. Got it? Now let's come to the next gland, that is the adrenal gland. Now we know that the word renal is related to kidney. So this gland is located on the kidney. Okay, and one pair of the gland is located one above each kidney. One pair means two glands. Okay, because we have two kidneys. So one gland is located on the top of each kidney. So total two glands or one pair of gland is present. Okay, you can see the picture. On the left side, we have the kidney on the top of which adrenal gland is shown, and on the right side, we have the magnified view of the adrenal gland. Now, as you can see that the adrenal gland has two parts or two types of tissues. The outer tissue, the peripheral tissue, is adrenal cortex, and the tissue which is located in the central portion is the adrenal medulla. Okay, so in yellow color, adrenal cortex is shown, the tissue which is present on the peripheral side, and in the red color, adrenal medulla is shown, which is the tissue located in the central part of the adrenal gland. Okay, so Adrenal medulla. First we will discuss about the adrenal medulla, then about the adrenal cortex. Adrenal medulla is the centrally located tissue which was shown in the red color. It secretes two hormones, and these hormones are known as catecholamines or catecholamines. Okay, so the hormones secreted by the medulla of the adrenal gland are known as catecholamines. There are two types of hormones. One is adrenaline or epinephrine, okay, and the other is noradrenaline. So the hormones secreted by the medulla of the adrenal gland are known as catecholamines. And how many catecholamines are there? Two catecholamines. One is adrenaline, which is also known as epinephrine, and the other is noradrenaline, which is also known as non-epinephrine. Okay. So adrenaline and epinephrine are same thing, and noradrenaline and non-epinephrine are same thing. Okay, so these are two different hormones which are secreted by the medulla of the adrenal gland, and in general these two are known as catecholamines, okay, or catecholamines. So these hormones, that means the catecholamines, are secreted in response of any kind of stressful situation. Okay, therefore these are also known as emergency hormones or hormones of fight and flight. Okay, because these are released in response to stress. Now, during stressful conditions, what happened to your body? Alertness increase. Okay, so it leads to increase in the alertness, pupillary dilation, okay, dilation of the pupil. Piloerection means raising of the hairs. So when there is an emergency condition, you are very stressed, then the hairs of your body are erected, right? They are raised. This is known as piloerection. This is also caused by the catecholamines. Sweating also, okay, you will also sweat during the emergency conditions. So all these things are caused by the hormones known as catecholamines. And what are different types of catecholamines? Adrenaline and noradrenaline. Adrenaline are also known as epinephrine, and noradrenaline is also known as non-epinephrine. Okay, and this also leads to increase in the heart rate, the respiratory rate, etc. Okay, when you are very stressed, your heartbeat also increases, your rate of respiration increases, you breathe very fast, right? And they also lead to the breakdown of the glycogen, lipids and proteins. Okay, so they also stimulate the breakdown of the glycogen, lipids and proteins. So when the glycogen will break, what will be released? Glucose will be released. Okay, when the lipid will break, it will also release the adipic acids. When the proteins will break, what will be released? Amino acids will be released. Okay, so it leads to the breakdown of these things. Now, the adrenal medulla was the central part of the adrenal gland. The outer part is known as adrenal cortex, and this part secretes corticoids. So the hormones which are secreted by the adrenal cortex are known as corticoids. Why they are known as corticoids? Because they are secreted by the cortex. Okay. Now, adrenal cortex is the outer tissue of the adrenal gland, right? Now, it consists of three layers. So, the adrenal gland, which consists of two layers, suppose this is adrenal gland, this is the outer layer, this shaded portion is the outer layer, that means the adrenal cortex, and the middle layer, which is not shaded, is the adrenal medulla. Now, this outer part, that is adrenal cortex, it also consists of three different layers. Okay, so the outermost layer is known as zona glomerulosa. This is the outer layer of the adrenal cortex, and it secretes mineralocorticoids, the hormones secreted by the zona glomerulosa. That means the outermost layer of the cortex is mineralocorticoids. For example, aldosterone. Okay, so this hormone is secreted by the outermost layer, that means zona glomerulosa of the adrenal cortex, and it regulates the balance of the water and ions, salts, electrolytes, etc. in the body. Okay, so as it is clear from the name, mineralocorticoids will maintain the balance of electrolytes or minerals in the body, right, along with the water. Then the middle layer of the adrenal cortex is known as zona fasciculata. That is the middle layer. Okay, It secretes the hormones known as glucocorticoids. So in general, all the hormones are known as corticoids. Corticoids, because these are secreted by the cortex, adrenal cortex. And they can be mineralocorticoids, which are secreted by the outermost layer. It can be this glucocorticoid, which is secreted by the middle layer. And then it can be sex corticoids also, which is secreted by the inner layer. Okay, so the outer layer of the adrenal cortex secrete the mineralocorticoids. Then this middle layer known as zona fasciculata secretes the glucocorticoids, for example cortisol, and it is involved in the carbohydrate metabolism. Okay, as it is clear from the name, glucocorticoids will be involved in the metabolism of carbohydrates, especially glucose. Okay, and the innermost layer of the adrenal cortex is known as zona reticularis. Okay, the outermost was known as, like, let's recapitulate this because I think this is quite confusing. Where is the cortex? Adrenal cortex. Okay, so they secrete the hormones called corticoids, and it consists of three layers. Outer one is known as zona glomerulosa. It secretes mineralocorticoids. Okay. Then the middle layer, zona fasciculata. It secretes the glucocorticoids. And the inner layer, zona reticularis, secretes the sex corticoids. The example of sex corticoids is androgenic steroids. So you also have to remember the examples. The example of the mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. The example of the glucocorticoid is cortisol, and the example of the sex corticoids is androgenic steroids. Okay, these words are quite confusing. We often get confused, right? Now, let's discuss one by one glucocorticoids. So glucocorticoids, we have discussed that it is secreted by the middle layer, right? Middle layer. That means zona fasciculata. It stimulates the gluconeogenesis, lipolysis, and proteolysis. It also inhibits the cellular uptake and utilization of the amino acids. Example of the glucocorticoid is cortisol. So in red color, I have marked the example. Okay. So cortisol is the example of glucocorticoid. Now this particular glucocorticoid, that is cortisol, produces anti-inflammatory reaction. Okay, suppresses the immune response and stimulates the RBC production. So the first 2 points, that means the production of the anti-inflammatory reaction and the suppression of the immune response, is done by the glucocorticoids in general. Okay, and this last point, that is stimulation of the RBC production, is specifically by the cortisol. Okay, so the glucocorticoid was released by the middle layer of the cortex. Now mineralocorticoid, it was released by the outermost layer, outer layer, that is zona glomerulosa. Okay. The example of the mineralocorticoids we have seen, aldosterone is the example of mineralocorticoids. It acts mainly at the renal tubules of the kidney, stimulates the reabsorption of sodium, iron and water, and excretion of the potassium and phosphate ions. So the sodium, iron and water will be reabsorbed. Okay, they will be reabsorbed. On the other hand, the potassium ion and phosphate ions will be excreted out. Okay, they will be removed from the body. Okay, sodium and water will be absorbed into the body, reabsorbed, and the potassium and phosphate will be excreted out. Thus, it helps in maintenance of the electrolytes, body fluid volume, osmotic pressure, as well as the blood pressure. Okay, it was released by the outermost layer, zona glomerulosa, and the last one is sex corticoids, which are released by the inner layer of the adrenal cortex. What is the name of the inner layer? Zona reticularis. Zona reticularis. So you have to remember the name: zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis. I have mentioned them from outside to inside: outermost layer, middle layer, and inner layer. And the example of the sex corticoids is androgenic corticoids, which is involved in the growth of hair in general. Okay, so the hair of the axial part pubic hair as well as facial hair during the puberty. Okay, so the growth of hair during the puberty in different parts of the body is affected by the androgenic corticoids, which is example of sex corticoids released by the innermost layer of the adrenal cortex, that is zona reticularis. Okay, so if you do not revise these things, you will be confused. Now we come to the next gland, that is pancreas. Pancreas is a composite gland because it can act as the endocrine gland as well as the exocrine gland, right? Therefore, it is also known as heterocline gland. Heterocline gland, and that is why we say that it is a composite gland, right? The endocrine pancreas consists of a large number of cells called islets of Langerhans. So what are islets of Langerhans? These are the cells of the endocrine pancreas, right? The number of the islets of Langerhans is about 1 to 2 millions, right, in the pancreas, and they consist of only 1 to 2% of the pancreatic tissue. So suppose this is the pancreas, only 1 to 2%, let's say this much, is the islets of Langerhans, and this is about 1 to 2 million. So can you see that only 1 to 2% of the total number of cells of the pancreas is 1 to 2 million. So can you imagine the number of total cells in the pancreas? It will be so large, right? Only 1 to 2% is 1 to 2 million. Now, there are two types of cells, two types of islets of Langerhans, alpha cells and beta cells. Okay, the islets of Langerhans will consist of two types of cells, alpha cells and beta cells. Again, they will have opposite functions. So alpha cells secrete the glucagon. The hormone which is secreted by the alpha cells is glucagon, which is a hyperglycemic hormone. Why hyperglycemic? Hyper means more. So it will increase the glucose level in the blood. Therefore, it is known as hyperglycemic. Okay, it is a peptide hormone or a protein hormone. It maintains the normal glucose level. It acts mainly on the hepatocytes. So where does this alpha cell act? This glucagon, we are talking about the glucagon. Okay, all these points are about the glucagon. So glucagon is a peptide hormone. It maintains normal glucose level. It acts on the hepatocytes, that means liver cells. The word hepato is related to liver. So the hepatocytes means the cells of the liver. Okay, so the glucagon acts on the cells of the liver and stimulates glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. Okay, that means both glycogenolysis and the gluconeogenesis will lead to the increase in the blood calcium level. Blood glucose level. Here glucose is involved, not calcium. In the thyroid and parathyroid, calcium was involved. Here glucose is involved. So it leads to the increase in the blood glucose level. This condition is known as hyperglycemia. Increase in the blood glucose level is known as hyperglycemia, and therefore the glucagon is known to be hyperglycemic in nature. Okay, it reduces the glucose uptake and utilization. So it will also reduce the uptake and utilization of the glucose. So the glucose will not be absorbed from the blood; it will remain in the blood. Okay, therefore the amount of glucose will increase in the blood. On the other hand, the second type of cells of the islet of Langerhans are beta cells. They secrete insulin, which is again a peptide or protein hormone, but its work is opposite to the work of the glucagon. Okay, it will decrease the blood glucose level. Blood glucose level. It will decrease the blood glucose level. It helps in the regulation of the glucose homeostasis. So both insulin and the glucagon together maintain the glucose homeostasis in the blood, right? It acts on the hepatocytes as well as the adipocytes. Okay, hepatocytes means the cells of the liver and adipocytes means cells of the adipose tissues. Okay, so it acts on both these cells. It enhances the cellular glucose uptake. Okay, so the glucagon was not leading to the uptake of the glucose, but this is helping in the uptake of the glucose from the blood. Okay, and the utilization of the glucose, which will lead to decrease in the blood glucose level. So what will happen when the glucose uptake and utilization will take place? The glucose will move from blood to the hepatocytes or adipocytes. Okay, The glucose which was present in the blood will move to the hepatocytes or the adipocytes. So the amount of glucose in the blood will be reduced. Okay. It will lead to decrease in the blood glucose level, and this condition is known as hypoglycemia, that means decrease in the blood glucose level. It also stimulates glycogenesis, that means the formation of the glycogen. Formation of the glycogen, and the glycogen is formed from the glucose. So all the glucose will be utilized in the formation of the glycogen. So again the amount of glucose will reduce in the blood. Okay. So by different ways it will lead to the decrease in the blood glucose level. On the other hand, the glucagon will lead to the increase in the blood glucose level by different methods. Now there is a condition called diabetes mellitus. How is this caused? It is caused by the prolonged hyperglycemia. If there is a prolonged hyperglycemia, that means there is more amount of glucose in the blood for a long period, then it can lead to diabetes mellitus. And what happens? There will be loss of glucose through urine, because a large amount of glucose is present in the blood. So these glucose will be lost through the urine, right? And it also leads to the formation of harmful bodies known as ketone bodies. And this condition is known as ketonuria. Ketonuria. Okay, the formation of the ketone bodies is known as ketonuria. And what is the treatment of the diabetes mellitus? Insulin therapy. So the patient suffering from the diabetes mellitus can be treated by the insulin therapy. Now we come to the gonads, the testes and the ovaries. Okay. So the testes are present in males and the ovaries are present in females, and both of them are present in pairs. That means each male will have one pair of testes and each female will have one pair of ovaries. Okay, these are present in pairs. So let's discuss one by one. First, testis. So it is present in the scrotal sac outside the abdomen. Okay, scrotal sac, because there is a pouch called scrotum. Scrotum, which is located outside the body, in which testis is present. Okay, and why testis is present outside the body? Because the formation of sperm in the testis requires a temperature slightly below the body temperature. Okay, so the temperature inside the body is higher, and the temperature outside the body, just outside the body, is about 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius below the body temperature, which is suitable for the formation of sperms. Okay, therefore the testes are located outside the body, right? And these are present in the pouches called scrotum, right? Now the testes play dual functions. That means they can act as the primary sex organs. That means the formation of semen or gametes take place in the testis, and they can also act as the endocrine gland, because the formation of hormone also takes place. So the testis also secrete hormones, right? So it plays dual function as a primary sex organ as well as an endocrine gland. Okay. Now, if you know the basic structure of the testis, you would know that inside the testis there are many compartments. Okay, and each compartment is known as testicular lobule. Okay, so each compartment is known as testicular lobules. Now if we see what is present in a testicular lobule, suppose this is testicular lobule. So what is present inside a testicular lobule? That means in each compartment there will be seminiferous tubules. So a tube-like structure called seminiferous tubules, which is responsible for the formation of gametes or semens. That means sperms. What is the male gametes? Sperms are the male gametes. So the sperms are formed in the seminiferous tubules, right? And the remaining space in which the seminiferous tubule is not present. So inside the lobule, seminiferous tubule will be present, and then there will be some spaces which will be remaining. Okay, so these spaces will contain some tissue known as interstitial tissue. Okay, so interstitial tissue or stromal tissue, because the space, empty space, is known as stroma. So the tissue which is present in that space is also known as stromal tissue or interstitial tissue. Okay, now we know there are two things inside the testicular lobules, the seminiferous tubules and the stromal tissue or interstitial tissue. So the seminiferous tubule is responsible for the formation of sperm, and the interstitial tissue, that means the stromal tissue is responsible for the formation of hormones, okay, because the cells of this tissue are known as Leydig cells, and these cells secrete a large number of hormones which are known as androgens, okay. So a group of hormones are secreted by the Leydig cells known as androgens, mainly testosterone. So what is the main androgen or main hormone here? Testosterone is the main hormone. Okay, other than testosterone, there will be other hormones also, but testosterone is the main hormone which is present in the males. Okay. So here we have the structure. You can see this side in the dark blue color we have the epididymis, which is the accessory sex organ, and look at the black background. This is the testis, black color. So the testis is outlined in the black color, and inside the testis you can see several compartments known as testicular lobes or testicular lobules, and inside each testicular lobe you can see seminiferous tubules which are shown in light blue color or sky blue color. Okay, so in sky blue color we have the seminiferous tubules, right? And the remaining space which is shown in the lavender color, this is the stromal tissue or interstitial tissue, which consists of the cells, interstitial cells or the Leydig cells, and these cells are responsible for the production of the hormones called androgens. Okay, you can have another picture here. You can see another picture which shows you the enlarged view of the testicular lobule. So suppose that this is one testicular lobule. So inside the lobule in red color we have the seminiferous tubules. So these red color circles which are shown are the seminiferous tubules, and the remaining space which is the interstitial tissue, here you can see the presence of cells called Leydig cells. So these small circular cells like this, these cells are the Leydig cells. Got it? So we will study in detail about them in the chapter human reproduction. Here we have to focus on the hormone. So the hormones secreted by the Leydig cell is androgens. Okay, so androgen is not a single hormone, it is a group of hormones, right? So what are the functions of the androgens? They regulate the development, maturation and function of the male accessory sex organ. What are accessory sex organ? The testis is the main sex organ, primary sex organ, and the accessory sex organs are epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, urethra, etc. Okay, again we will study about them in the chapter human reproduction. So the development, maturation and the functioning of these organs is regulated by the hormones called androgens, right? Now the next is muscular growth. So the androgens also play an important role in the muscular growth. That means the growth of the muscle tissues like actins, myosin, okay? Then the growth of the facial and axial hair during the puberty. Aggressiveness. We know that during puberty you become more aggressive. We are talking about the males, not females. Okay, so aggressiveness, this is also due to the hormones, production of the hormones called androgens. Then the voice become low pitched. Okay, so the low pitched voice is also because of the effect of the hormone androgens. Okay, and the main hormone is testosterone. They stimulate the spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis means formation of sperms or formation of spermatozoa. Formation of spermatozoa. So this is also stimulated by the androgens. Then these hormones act on the central neural system and influence the male sexual behavior, that is libido. Libido. Okay, what is libido? Male sexual behavior. So this is also affected by the hormones androgens. Okay, when these hormones act on the central nervous system. And then these hormones also have anabolic or synthetic effects on the protein and carbohydrate metabolism. That means they can indirectly lead to the formation of the carbohydrate or proteins. Okay, anabolic effect means synthetic effect. It can lead to the formation, not the breakdown. Okay, then this was the testis. Now we come to the ovary. It is present in females, of course, and it is located in the abdomen. So the testis was located outside the abdomen, but the ovaries are located inside the abdomen of the females. Okay. We know that the ovary is also the primary sex organ in female. It is the primary sex organ in the females, right? And it is also an endocrine gland. So here we have to discuss it as an endocrine gland mainly. It is composed of the ovarian follicles and the stomal tissue. So what are present inside the ovaries? It consists of the ovarian follicles and the stomal tissues. Follicles, you might be knowing primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, right? We will discuss about them in the human reproduction. Now, the ovary produces one ovum per menstrual cycle. So, each month there is a cycle, menstrual cycle, and in each menstrual cycle, one ovum is produced by the ovary, right? And it also produces two group of the steroid hormones. Now, we have to focus on the hormones here because we are talking about the endocrine system, right? So, two groups of steroid hormones are secreted by the ovary. So first one is estrogen and the other one is progesterone. So you have to remember both estrogen and progesterone. So let's discuss one by one. First we will discuss about the estrogen. So we know that the ovaries consist of the follicles and the stomal tissue. So out of them, the estrogen is synthesized and secreted by the follicles, okay, by the growing ovarian follicles. So when the follicles are growing from primary to secondary to tertiary, then during this growth, the estrogen hormone is secreted. Okay, and this hormone also affects this growth of the follicles. It also assists the growth of the follicles, right? Now what happens after ovulation? The follicles get ruptured, right? The Graafian follicle gets ruptured and then it is converted into a structure called corpus luteum, right? Now, what is the importance of corpus luteum? This corpus luteum will release another hormone that is known as progesterone. So that we will discuss. First, discuss about the roles of the estrogen. So there is a wide ranging effect of the estrogen hormone. For example, it is involved in the growth and activities of the female secondary sex organs. Okay, so it regulates the growth and activities of the female secondary sex organ, similar to the androgens which were involved in the male secondary sex organs. Okay, so similarly here the estrogen will be involved in the growth of the female secondary sex organs. Then it is also involved in the development of the growing ovarian follicles. Just now I have said that primary follicle will be converted into secondary follicle, then it will be converted to tertiary follicle, and during this growth the estrogen will be secreted, right? And this estrogen in turn will support this growth of the ovarian follicles. Okay, then female secondary sex characters are also affected by the estrogen hormone. For example, when there is puberty in females, the pitch of the voice increases. Okay, it becomes high. So the higher pitch of the female is also due to the estrogen hormone, and in males the lower pitch was due to the androgen hormone. Okay, now it is also responsible for the development of mammary gland. Okay, previously we have discussed that there is a hormone called prolactin, which is secreted by the anterior pituitary, right? So there we discussed that the prolactin is responsible for the development of the mammary gland. Here we see that the estrogen is responsible for the development of mammary gland. So actually both of these hormones are involved in the development of the mammary glands. But the most important between these two is the prolactin. Okay. And it also regulates the female sexual behavior, right? Similar to the androgens which were regulating the male sexual behavior. Okay, so here androgen will regulate the female sexual behavior. So from here you can see that the estrogen is mainly involved during the puberty. Okay, when the female is converting from a child to an elder person. Okay, so during the conversion of child to an adult, the estrogen will play more important role. What is the role of progesterone? Progesterone will play more important role during the pregnancy time. Okay. And from where is it secreted? It is secreted by the corpus luteum. So just now we discussed that after ovulation, the follicles are degenerated and converted into a structure called corpus luteum, right? So this corpus luteum releases another hormone called progesterone, which supports pregnancy. So the most important role of the progesterone is during the pregnancy, okay, whereas the estrogen was playing the role throughout the life, especially during the puberty, right? Now it acts on the mammary gland. So during the pregnancy, this hormone progesterone acts on the mammary gland and stimulates the formation of alveoli. What are alveoli? These are the milk storing sacs. So these are the sacs which store milk during the pregnancy. Okay. So the progesterone help in the formation of the alveoli which will store the milk, and it also helps in the milk secretion. Okay. After the childbirth. So this was about the gonads, the testes and ovaries. These were the gonads. Now we will discuss about the hormones of heart, kidney and gastrointestinal tract. So till now we were discussing about the endocrine glands, okay? The pineal gland, the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, thymus, thyroid, pancreas, liver, all these things, sorry, kidney, all these things were the endocrine glands, right? But other than these endocrine glands, there are the organs in the body which can secrete hormone. For example, heart, kidney, gastrointestinal tract. So these are not endocrine gland, but still they secrete hormones. So we also have to study about these hormones, right? So first one is heart. Heart secretes a hormone called arterial natriuretic factor. In short, it is written as ANF. Why it is known as arterial natriuretic factor? Because it is secreted by the wall of the arteria, right? Our heart consists of the artericles and the ventricles, right? Arteria and ventricles. Arteria and ventricles. So two arteria and two ventricles are present. So the wall of the arteria secretes this hormone called arterial natriuretic factor. What is the role of this hormone? It decreases the blood pressure. Okay. So when the blood pressure increases, then this hormone is released and it dilates the blood vessels. So this is the, suppose this is the blood vessel. After dilation, it will become like this, right? So this arterial natriuretic factor is responsible for the dilation of the blood vessels, which will eventually lead to the reduction in the blood pressure. Okay, when the blood vessels will get dilated, then the blood pressure will decrease, right? Now the second one is kidney. So kidney secretes, kidney has a cell known as juxtaglomerular cells, like, right? We have studied about the juxtaglomerular cells. So these cells secrete a hormone called erythropoietin. Now you can understand the role of this hormone from the name itself, erythropoietin. So you can see that this word is similar to the erythropoiesis. Therefore, this hormone erythropoietin stimulates the process of erythropoiesis. What is erythropoiesis? Means the formation of red blood cells. Erythropoiesis is the formation of the RBCs or the red blood cells. Okay, so the formation of the RBCs is stimulated by which hormone? Erythropoietin, which are secreted by the juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney. Got it? Now, the gastrointestinal tract also release some hormones. So majorly four different types of hormones are secreted by the gastrointestinal tract. These are gastrin. So first one is gastrin. It acts on the gastric glands. Okay, obviously gastrin will act on the gastric gland. So many things you can understand by the name itself. And it stimulates the secretion of the hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen. So we know that the HCl and pepsinogen are secreted. So these are secreted by which hormone? Gastrin. Okay, these stimulates the secretion of the hydrochloric acid and the pepsinogen. And the second hormone that is secreted by the gastrointestinal tract is the secretin. What is the role of secretin? It acts on the exocrine pancreas. So we know that the pancreas are the composite gland. These are endocrine as well as exocrine. So the secretin acts on which pancreas? Exocrine pancreas, and stimulates the secretion of water and bicarbonate ions. Okay. Now the third hormone which is secreted by the gastrointestinal tract is cholecystokinin. In short, it is written as CCK, cholecystokinin. Okay. Now it can act on both pancreas and gallbladder. So when it acts on the pancreas, there it stimulates the secretion of the pancreatic enzyme, and when it acts on the gallbladder, there it stimulates the secretion of the bile juice. Okay, so from pancreas, the pancreatic enzyme, which is also known as pancreatic juice, that will be released, and from the gallbladder, bile juice is secreted. So both these secretions are stimulated by which hormone? Cholecystokinin. Okay. Now the last hormone is gastric inhibitory peptide. Gastric inhibitory peptide. Now from the name itself, you can understand it will have an inhibitory action. That means it will not stimulate the secretion, it will inhibit the secretion. Okay. So it inhibits the gastric secretion and motility. Simple. Now, other than these organs, there are many tissues in the body which can secrete the hormones. And these hormones are known as growth factors. Okay, so what are growth factors? These are the hormones which are secreted by some non-endocrine tissue present in the body. And these hormones are essential for the normal growth of the tissues and repairing of the tissue or regeneration of the tissue. Regeneration of the tissue. Okay, so the growth or repairing or regeneration of the tissue can be affected by the hormones known as growth factors, which are secreted by the non-endocrine tissues present in the body. Okay, now mechanism of hormone action. So here I will remove my picture so that the complete screen is visible to you, because the diagram will occupy the whole screen. Okay. So mechanism of hormone action. Now these hormones do not produce their effect directly. First they have to bind with their receptors. And these receptors are specific to their hormones. That means if we have a hormone H1, then it has to bind only with its receptor R1. If there are other receptors, let's say R2, R3, it cannot bind with them. Okay, it will bind only with the receptor 1, because only the receptor 1 will allow it to bind with it. Other receptors will not allow this hormone to bind with them. So we can say that the receptors are specific to their hormones. Also, these receptors are located only on the target tissue. For example, we have the tissue of the lungs, tissue of the kidney, and the tissue of the heart. And this hormone H1 has to act on the lungs, then this receptor R1 will be present only on the lungs, not on the kidney or the heart. Got it? So 2 points you have to remember, that the receptors are specific to their hormones and the receptors are located only on the target tissue. Okay, specific receptors are located only on the target tissue. Now these receptors can be present either on the cell membrane or inside the cell. Okay, if they are present on the cell membrane, then the receptors are known as membrane bound receptors. Membrane bound receptors. And if they are present inside the cell, then they are known as intracellular receptor. Intracellular receptor. And most of the intracellular receptors are located inside the nucleus. Therefore, these are also known as nuclear receptors. Okay. Now, what happens? First, the hormone binds with its specific receptor that is located on the target tissue, and it forms a complex called hormone receptor complex. Okay, so first step is the binding of hormone and receptor to form the hormone receptor complex. Now this hormone receptor complex will lead to some biochemical changes in the target tissue, and hence it will regulate the metabolic and physiological functions of the tissue. Okay. Now the hormones can be of different types. They can be peptide hormone, that means protein hormone. They can be steroids, that means derived from the cholesterol, right? Most of the steroids are derived from the cholesterol. Then these hormones can be iodothioronins or they can be amino acid derivatives. Let's see the examples of each one of them. The examples of peptide hormones are insulin, glucagon, pituitary hormone, hypothalamic hormone. All these are examples of peptide hormone. Then the examples of steroid hormones are corticoids. For example, glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids. So all these are examples of the steroidal hormone. Okay. So aldosterone is which type of hormone? Steroidal hormone. Then testosterone, estradiol, progesterone, all these are types of steroids. Then iodothyronins, the thyroid hormones, that means T3 or T4. T3 means triiodothyronin, and T4 is tetraiodothyronin or thyroxine. Okay, so these are also example of the these are the examples of the iodothyronins. And the last type of hormones, that is amino acid derivatives. Examples are epinephrine and norepinephrine. That means emergency hormones. Emergency hormones are examples of amino acid derivatives. Okay. Now, out of these four types of hormones, the steroids and the iodothyronins, these are mostly intracellular, while the others are membrane bound. So, the peptide hormone will be membrane bound, whereas the steroids or the iodothyronins will be intracellular or nuclear. They can be present inside the nucleus. The receptors can be present inside the nucleus. Okay. Now, here you can see this is the example of the membrane bound receptor. So in red color we can see the cell membrane. This is the cell membrane. Okay, ovarian cell membrane. This is the cell membrane of the ovary. Here we have the receptor. This is the receptor which is located on the cell membrane. Now what will happen? The hormone, for example FSH or any other peptide hormone, will come and bind with the receptor. Okay, we have already discussed that the receptors which are present on the membrane, they bind with the peptide hormones. Okay, peptide hormones or the amino acid derivatives bind with the membrane bound receptors, whereas the other hormones like steroids hormones or iodothyronin bind with the intracellular receptors. Okay, so here this hormone is FSH, that is a protein hormone. So it will bind with the membrane bound receptor. Okay, now it forms the complex. Hormone receptor complex is formed. Now this hormone cannot enter into the cell because the receptor is present only on the cell membrane, not inside the cell. So this complex cannot enter into the cell. So how will it produce its effect? So this hormone will generate second messenger. Okay, it will generate a second messenger. The example is AMP, cyclic AMP, or calcium ion. Okay, or IP3. So there can be different types of second messengers possible. So since this hormone cannot enter into the cell, it will generate a second messenger, for example cyclic AMP, IP3 or calcium ion, and then this second messenger generated will produce the biochemical responses, and it will regulate the physiological responses or physiological effects inside the tissue. Okay, for example ovarian growth. So this is how the membrane bound receptor and the hormone work. Now the second case is when the receptor is located inside the cell or it is located inside the nucleus. So this is the example of a nuclear receptor. Nuclear receptor. So here you can see this orange color line shows you the lining of the nucleus. Okay, so inside this we have the nucleus. Now in this case the receptor is not located on the cell membrane, it is located inside the nucleus. So the hormone, for example estrogen, which is a steroid hormone, can enter into the cell. So this hormone has entered into the cell and it has also entered into the nucleus because its receptor is located inside the nucleus, and it will bind with the receptor forming the hormone receptor complex. So can you see this hormone receptor complex in green color circular? This green color circular portion that is shown here is the hormone, and this is the receptor to which it has bound. Now this time the hormone receptor complex will directly, it will affect the genome. Okay, because inside the nucleus what is present? The genome is present, and the genome consists of the DNA. It consists of the DNA sequences. So the hormone receptor complex will interact directly with the genome or indirectly with the DNA sequence of the cell. Okay, now we know that the DNA will be converted into RNA by the process called transcription. Okay, so the DNA has got its effect from the hormone. The hormone has already interacted with this DNA. So when this DNA will be converted into RNA by the process called transcription, this effect will also be passed on to the RNA, right? And then this RNA or the mRNA will be translated into a protein. Then the effect will also be transported or transferred to the protein. So the protein that is formed as a result will carry the effect of the hormone, right? And therefore it will produce the desired physiological responses, for example tissue growth or differentiation. So whatever was the goal of the hormone will be fulfilled. Got it? So this is how the two types of hormones work, right? Or the two types of receptors work. I hope you have understood this. So here we complete this chapter. I hope you have understood this chapter well. This was the last chapter of human physiology, and it was also the last chapter of class 11th. Okay. So today we complete the class 11 syllabus. If you have any doubt, please feel free to mention your doubts in the comment section. We can again make some videos on the topics which you have not understood, right? And from the next session onwards, we will start class 12 syllabus. So we will be back very soon with another session. Till then, keep learning, keep scoring high. Thank you so much.